Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Generosity Ladder, Your Next Step to Financial Peace by Nelson Searcy, with Jennifer Dykes Henson. Narrated by Adam Verner. Publisher's note: this audiobook refers to figures included in the print and ebook editions of the book. Welcome to your new reality. Dream with me for a moment. Relax and imagine a reality in which you don't live with financial strain. You don't struggle to make ends meet each month. You are completely out of debt. You aren't bound by the ties of materialism. Your needs are consistently met. You have the ability to save for your children's education and your retirement. You have the desire and ability to help people in need. You have the resources to give to causes much bigger than your own concerns. You live a life full of generosity, joy, and peace. The principles contained in this little book have the potential to turn these dreams into a reality. Whether or not they will depends on what you decide to do with them. Your next step to financial peace begins with discovering how to scale the generosity ladder. As we get started, I make you this promise: the view from the top rung is well worth the climb. Are you ready? Chapter 1. Shifting Perspectives. The way we see things is the source of the way we think and the way we act. Stephen Covey. Have you ever experienced a paradigm shift? You know, that moment of clarity, when you realize there's an entirely different way of seeing things than the way you've always seen them. The first step in experiencing a paradigm shift is to acknowledge that you currently see the world through a certain set of lenses. These lenses have been created by a number of factors: your family, your upbringing, your education, and your social circle, to name a few. Based on your life experience, you understand the world in a specific way. Or as Shakespeare penned, "Such as we are made of, such we be." I would take the liberty of adding, "and such we see," to the great writer's assertion. The concept of a paradigm shift first came on the scene in 1962, with Thomas Kuhn's work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn exposed the reality that nearly every noteworthy advancement in science is, at its core, a break with an old way of seeing the world. His revelation proved that to make strides toward any kind of advancement, we must first recognize our current paradigms, and then open ourselves up to the possibility of a new way of thinking. Perhaps the best way to illustrate this phenomenon is with an actual illustration. Go ahead and take a look at Figure 1.1. Depending on your perspective, you may see a beautiful young woman shyly turning her face away from the artist, or you may see an old hunched woman with a large nose and downcast gaze. Which woman do you see? Whichever one it is, another reality exists. If you see the young woman in the picture, I have news for you. This is a picture of an old lady. But to see her, you have to shift your perspective. Here are some clues to help you see things a new way. The young woman's ear is the older woman's eye. The curve of her chin is the tip of the old woman's nose. Do you see her yet? One more hint: the choker necklace around the younger subject's neck is the opening of the old woman's mouth. If you first saw the older woman, just work backward from these clues until you see the younger woman's image. Pretty amazing, huh? I have seen people get angry with one another over this exercise. Sometimes those who see the old woman first are so convinced they are right that they think those seeing something else are crazy, and vice versa. We all tend to think we see things as they really are, but obviously that's not the case. This image is a trivial example, but it illustrates a profound truth. When we are able to open our minds to a new reality, we give ourselves the opportunity to experience life-changing, growth-spurring paradigm shifts. Money matters. Most of us have grown up with a skewed understanding of money and possessions. Based on misinformation, poor examples, and our own desires, we have unconsciously developed a certain paradigm for understanding and managing our income. From the first $5 bill we were given in a birthday card, to our first paycheck, and everything we've received since. Unfortunately for most of us, our financial paradigm has led us into trouble. Our collective wrong perspective has landed us as a society in major debt and contributed to broken families and high levels of stress and anxiety. Our intentions to handle our resources well may be good, but money in our culture has gone bad. Too many people feel they have to go into debt just to meet their basic needs. Every day is a struggle. Others simply want to go on a nice vacation or give their kids a good education. We want to take care of our aging parents or save for our retirement. But we can't get around to doing these things because we lack the funds. The majority of us, incredibly wealthy by the world standards, are locked in a battle with the constant desire for more. Don't think you are wealthy? If you make more than $2 a day, you are among the top 2% of the wealthiest people in the world. Yet even in our abundance, we have internalized the buy now, pay later mantra of our culture. We live above our means. As my friend and financial guru Dave Ramsey says, we buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. Have you ever been there? Money has become a way of keeping score. It's as if we are in competition with each other to see who can get the most stuff, live in the biggest house, and wear the most expensive clothes. While different people experience different levels of financial need, money is a continual struggle for us all. No matter how much we have, we always seem to need more. Financial stress is a shadow that never seems to leave us. Most of our money problems boil down to bad financial decisions. Financial decisions that are the result of a distorted perspective. In fact, we are often so rooted in our own paradigm of money management that we don't even realize we are making poor decisions. Like a fish in water, we can't see the reality of the environment around us. We are just doing what we know to do, wondering why we continually live under the thumb of financial oppression. To get back on the right track, we need a good dose of self-examination. Take a look at your own financial life. Here are a few signs that you are not making wise financial decisions. Your debt is growing each month. You are making only the minimum monthly payments to your creditors. If you miss one paycheck, you can't cover your mortgage or rent and bills. You and your spouse fight about money regularly. By the way, money problems are the #1 cause of divorce in America. You are not able to put money into a savings or retirement account every month. You are constantly stressed about money. Because of your financial situation, you feel like you can't live the life you were created to live. Can you relate to any of these warning signs? If you are like most people I talk with, most people I've met, you can relate to practically all of them. By and large, we live in a place of financial uncertainty. We aren't able to do all the things we should do, much less the things we want to do, because we are bound by money-colored handcuffs. But why? How did we create a world in which financial stress and unrelenting scarcity are the new norm? By operating out of our own financial paradigms. I'd say it's time for a shift in perspective. What is the generosity ladder? If you've ever changed a light bulb or painted a house, you know that a ladder is simply a tool to get you from your current level to a higher plane. Things that are out of reach before we step onto a ladder are easily in our grasp after we climb to the top. The generosity ladder, like any ladder, is a tool. Right now, you are standing at the bottom of the ladder, ankle deep in the financial stress of debt, anxiety, and frustration, looking toward the top rung, the place from which you'll be able to wrap your hand around a life filled with financial peace. See Figure 1.2. From that top rung, the new reality you've been dreaming of will be fully within your reach. But before you can start the climb toward a better future, you have to do two things. 1, acknowledge that your current way of viewing and managing your money isn't getting you where you want to be financially. 2, commit to questioning your own paradigm and beginning to see your financial life through a different lens. The journey toward financial peace begins with a paradigm shift. Just as you had to change your perspective to see the old woman or the young woman in Figure 1, You need to change your perspective in regard to the dollar bills in your bank account. Perhaps right now you feel like money has control over you. That's because your paradigm is giving it control. Perhaps you are convinced that you'll never have enough. That's because your paradigm has led you to this false belief. Maybe you are so far in debt that you can't see a way out. Your paradigm got you there. When you shift your perspective, you will experience a financial transformation. But the key is to allow yourself to see your money in a different light. As you read this book, let me encourage you to stay open to the ideas I am presenting. You will have to step into some uncomfortable territory. Change is never easy. When you've been operating by one set of beliefs for a long time, it can be difficult to open yourself up to a new set. But just remember, doing more of what you've always done will only get you more of what you've always gotten. Here's what I can guarantee. If you take this climb up the generosity ladder, you will experience life as you've never known it before. You will finally be able to replace financial stress with financial peace. You will be free to live the life you've been created to live, without the weight of constant worry. But you have to be willing to let the lens of truth clarify your perspective, starting with one big underlying paradigm-shifting truth. God owns it all. Everything was created through him and for him. Colossians chapter 1, verse 16. Chapter 2, Stepping Toward Excellence. Our stewardship of our money and possessions becomes the story of our lives. Randy Alcorn. Have you ever sat up all night on Christmas Eve, or the night before a big birthday, and put together one of those assembly-required toys for a child? Do you remember the feeling of excitement? Finally, you would give her the one thing she wanted more than anything else. Maybe you had to go all over town to find the gift and pay more than you really wanted to, but you didn't mind because you couldn't wait to give your child the desire of her heart. Not too long ago, I had this experience with my young son. He had a birthday coming up, and he wanted one specific toy more than he had wanted anything else in his life. The only problem was that the toy was new and incredibly popular, which meant it was in short supply. During my lunch break on the afternoon before his birthday, I set out on a mission to find the one gift that would make my son the happiest boy in the world. After running in and out of stores all over the city, I finally found exactly what I was looking for. But it cost nearly twice as much as I had expected. What did I do? Yep, like any good father, I bought my son the toy anyway. I didn't even realize the thing needed assembling until I got home late that evening. So after the almost birthday boy was tucked into bed, I worked into the wee hours, screwing together chunks of plastic. When I was finished, I left the surprise in the middle of the living room floor, so it would be the first thing my son saw on his birthday. Needless to say, the next morning he was ecstatic. I have never seen so much jumping up and down and squealing with delight. His attention was glued to this toy that represented so much of my time, effort, and money. I was happy I had been able to give him a good gift. His joy was all the gratitude I needed. Well, as happens more often than I'd like to admit, watching him play brought out the little boy in me. I decided I wanted to try out the new toy for myself. I asked my son, "Hey, can I see that for just a minute?" Any idea what his response was? In typical little boy fashion, he replied, "No, Daddy, it's mine." Now, I have to admit my first thought was, I bought you that toy, and I sat up half the night putting it together. Not to mention I'm a lot bigger than you are. I could reach down and take it away right now. Or I could go buy you 10 more if I decided to, and you are going to tell me that it's yours? Of course, I didn't say any of those things, but as I sat there watching my son, I couldn't help but think about how often I had treated God the same way my child had treated me. How often have I taken the resources and gifts God has given me and set about using them for my own purposes and enjoyment, with little regard for his ultimate ownership? How often have you? Recognizing the source. Giving is not something that comes naturally for us. We like to have complete control over our resources, After all, they are ours. We're the ones who got up and went to work for them. They sit in our bank account. We have a right to hold on to them as tightly as we'd like, and to do with them as we please. Right? Well, not exactly. Just as I paid for and gave my son his new toy, God gives us all the financial resources that come into our lives. James chapter 1, verse 17 tells us, "Whatever is good and perfect comes down to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens." Everything good in our lives comes from God. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 echoes James' words and takes things a little further. "Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment." God gives us all we need. You may have worked hard for the money that has come into your life, but God gave you the breath, health, strength, and intelligence to do your job. He gave you every ounce of your ability to earn your living, just as surely as I placed that toy on the living room floor for my son to find. God richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. God wants us to live blessed lives. He wants us to take pleasure in our days. Let me be clear. Nothing's wrong with enjoying the fruits of our labor. We have a responsibility to provide comfortably for our family and to save for the future. God simply wants us to use our money wisely so that we have the opportunity to live well and do good for others. 1 Timothy goes on to say, "Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future, so that they may experience true life." Chapter 6, verses 18 through 19. The problem comes when we fail to recognize where our money and our toys come from, when we begin to hoard them for our own pleasure. The solution is a grace-driven paradigm shift. If my son had realized that since I was the source of the money used to buy his birthday gift, it ultimately belonged to me, he would have been much more willing to share. But just as he did that day, we too often live under the false impression that we are the master of whatever finds its way into our hands. Eager not to let a good thing get away, we close our fist around it with no regard for the ultimate source. The only hope we have of loosening the death grip we have on our goods is to acknowledge that everything we have belongs to God. All of our money, houses, toys, mutual funds, clothes, gadgets, stocks, and retirement plans are not really our own. They're God's. We've just been entrusted with managing the resources He pours into our lives. Whether we are overseeing huge portfolios or shoestring weekly budgets, we are all managers of God's means. That's actually where the term stewardship comes from. A steward is someone who manages the wealth and property of another. The steward doesn't take ownership of his master's possessions. He doesn't use them for his own gain. He doesn't stash a little of the crop away so his family can increase their lifestyle. Instead, he distributes his master's resources as they should be distributed. Part of this means releasing a significant portion of the treasure back into the master's work. 3 critical questions. Understanding God's ultimate ownership means that we also recognize our role as conduits of His resources. We were not put on this earth to amass treasures for ourselves, but to let treasure pass through us and back to a greater purpose. The get all we can, while we can mindset that most of us live with is what has driven our culture's financial health off a cliff. In our ignorance, we have turned our perspective away from God and placed it on earthly things that will pass away. Whether we like to admit it or not, most of us live under the impression that the most important thing we can do on this earth is accumulate wealth. But by clutching our material possessions as we constantly search for more, we are fighting a battle we've already lost. When John D. Rockefeller died, he left all his wealth behind. And so will you. Not only that, but you will be held accountable for what you did with it while you were on this earth. Paul reminds us in Romans chapter 14, verse 12, that one day each of us will give a personal account to God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, he reiterates, "For we must all stand before Christ to be judged. We will each receive whatever we deserve for the good or evil we have done in this earthly body." That goes as much for how we handled our money as anything else. Perhaps more so, especially given Jesus' affirmation in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, "Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be." God is examining where we are laying up our treasure while we are on this earth. Or, to think of it in Jesus' terms, where the desires of our hearts are focused, and we will have to give an account. In his great work on this subject, Money, Possessions, and Eternity, Randy Alcorn writes, "One day everyone must answer these three questions. Where did it all go? What did I spend it on? What has been accomplished for eternity through my use of all this wealth?" And make no mistake, if you are reading this book, it's a safe bet you are wealthy by the world's standards. You may not feel like you manage a fortune, but if you are fortunate enough to have warm clothes, a roof over your head, and enough food to eat, you are extremely affluent in the grand scheme of things. Alcorn illustrates when he says, take for example a man or woman who works from age 25 to 65 and makes only $25,000 a year. This person of modest income by our standards will receive $1 million. He or she will manage a fortune. How will he manage it? How will you? Don't be a monkey. You may have heard the story about how people catch monkeys in India. Long ago, an insightful hunter figured out that monkeys are selfish creatures, so he created a way to capture them that takes advantage of this nature. First, the monkey hunter cuts a small hole in one end of a coconut, a hole just big enough for a monkey to fit his hand inside, and ties a long cord to the other end. Then he puts peanuts, banana chunks, or some other enticing treat into the hole. He places the coconut in the monkey's path and sneaks away, holding the other end of the cord. Inevitably, an unsuspecting monkey comes along, sniffs out the treat, and wriggles his little hand into the hole to grab the treasure. With that, the hunter's job is done. All he has to do is yank his side of the cord, and the entire monkey and coconut kit and caboodle lands at his feet. But isn't there something missing here? Why wouldn't the monkey just pull his hand out of the coconut and run for his life? Remember that monkeys are selfish. Once they get their hands on something they want, they won't let go. With his fist wrapped around the goods, the monkey can't get his hand out of the hole. If he would just loosen his grip and let go of the bounty, he could save himself. But he clings tight-fisted to what's his and finds himself ensnared. It's easy for us to see how ridiculous the monkey is being. If we were sitting at the edge of the jungle watching the scenario play out, we would scream, "Let go! That little fortune isn't worth your life!" And yet back in our own corner of the world, we are as guilty as the monkey. We hold on too tightly. We want what is ours, and we want it so badly that we are often blind to the consequences of our grasping. We are born keen on self-preservation. Despite the seeds of generosity that may be in our heart, we all are prone to approach life with an almost primal hoarding mentality. We want to be secure. We want to get all we can. We are focused so intently on our treasure that we don't see the hunter lurking behind that nearby tree. Open-handed living. Let me place Jesus' declaration about the connection between our heart and our treasure in context. Don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 21. If we are intent on storing up wealth for ourselves on this earth, we are acting like our primate friends. We are trading something of eternal value, treasure in heaven, for something that is ultimately of little value, treasure on earth. And as our greedy little hand stays closed over our earthly treasure, that's where our heart will be fully anchored. We all know what accompanies a life in which money takes the top priority: stress, lack, and anxiety, all the things we have too much of already. Here's some great news. You don't have to be afraid of opening your hand and giving control of your financial life to God. There is nothing more freeing than acknowledging the truth that your money is not yours anyway, and accepting your role as a steward. Changing your paradigm can change your life. The reason so few of us have taken this step is because the topic of financial stewardship has become taboo. People in positions of leadership have long been afraid to broach the subject, which has left everyone else confused. But stewardship is a part of life. If we don't learn how to handle our resources the way God intends, we'll never be able to live the life God created us to live. So the fear has to end. Money has to be brought out of the shadows. Jesus was never afraid to talk about money. Besides the kingdom of God, stewardship was his favorite subject. He talked more about money and possessions than about faith and prayer combined. He spent more time dealing with denarii than with heaven or hell. In fact, 2,350 verses in the Bible talk about money and how to deal with money. If I were asked to sum up all his teaching on money and possessions in one sentence, it would be this: don't be a monkey. Just kidding. It would actually be, live an open-handed life. When you open your hand and give something that's difficult to deal with over to God, He replaces that empty space in your palm with peace. So as you learn to release control of your money to God, He will replace your financial stress with financial peace. We can't deny the connection between our wallet and our heart. Money management is definitely a heart issue. If we want God to trust us with the true riches of heaven and His true purposes for us on this earth, we must discover how to live an open-handed life. We must live a life of generosity rather than a life of selfishness and greed. As we do, He will be able to bless and use us beyond what we ever thought possible. As Luke says in Luke chapter 16, verse 11, "If you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven?" The converse is also true. If we are trustworthy with worldly wealth, we will be trusted with the true riches of heaven. Being trustworthy means understanding that God owns it all, that we are managers, and that as part of our management, we are called to live an open-handed life of generosity. How do we get there? By scaling the generosity ladder, which begins with baby steps toward excellence. Baby steps. In his famous letter to the believers in Corinth, Paul wrote, "Since you excel in so many ways, in your faith, your gifted speakers, your knowledge, your enthusiasm, and your love for us, I want you to excel also in this gracious act of giving." 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 7. Paul's words may be a little confusing to you. First of all, why did he say gracious act of giving? Second, what does it really look like to excel in giving? As we've established, giving is not always easy. If we aren't living under the right paradigm, we don't want to let go of what has been given to us. We have a natural instinct to keep our fist tightly closed over the peanuts. So giving in the way God wants us to give requires grace. Grace He provides as we begin to trust His ultimate control over our financial life. We need God's grace to get to each new level of the generosity ladder. No one makes the climb in his own power. Now let's think about this business of excelling in giving. How can you excel in giving? Paul means that you become excellent at being a giver. You recognize the freedom that giving brings into your life. You strive toward generous living through generous giving. You have a desire to give, and you do it cheerfully. But maybe you're not there yet. Most of us have to learn to excel in this gracious act of giving by taking small steps toward excellence. If you think about it, everything you have ever excelled at came in stages. We can't go from 0 to 60 without learning how to shift the gears in between. This reality hit me one day, quite a while before the birthday surprise incident. as I was walking with my then 2.5-year-old son through a park.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?